future.
Alright, so we're going to jump right into it. This is the example of what it's going to look like at the end. Okay, so if you're not familiar with After Effects, we'll take it a step at a time, but that's where we're going with this. Alright, so just an overview, just so we can see what's happening here. Because it looks like a lot, but it's really not a whole lot of stuff happening. Just drop this down, drop that there. Okay, so here's my footage. This is what it rendered out of Maya as. And if I needed to fix something, jump back into Maya, fix it, re-render it out, wait another year, and then it'll be done. Okay. I have some clouds inside here. Let's see this. Oops. I have a landscape picture, another sky back there, another cloud up front, and then an adjustment layer to help tie everything in together. Okay, so it's really just a bunch of layers that go into this to make it look the way it looks. I actually have an extra layer on somewhere. I think this one. Yeah, didn't need that one on. Okay, and the way I'm going to show you is, it's not going to be exactly the same way I did this here, because every time you do something, it's always a little bit different than it previously was. So I'm just going to make a brand new project. Alright, and I'm going to import my footage, so I double click into the project area. I find my file. Here's my file, number 1 of my sequence. I make sure OpenEXR sequence is clicked. I hit import, and that brings in my footage. Okay, now you'll see up here it says 30 fps. That means 30 frames per second. I want to make this 24, so it goes a tad bit slower. So I'm going to right click, interpret footage, main, set this to 24. Now this is my default on my computer is 30, so I wanted this to be set to 30 to 24. So you could set that in your preferences if you wanted to, but you don't need to because we're just going to do it for this one. So I'm going to drop this onto a new composition. So I just drag this onto the new comp. Very similar to what we've already done before. And then we have this. So now we need to look at the layering process of what else we want to add to this. So I know I want in the background, I want like a city scape. So I'm going to double click in my area to import stuff. I'm going to go to my source images where I downloaded those images from last time. And I'm just going to bring in all the images. So I have these 4 images here: clouds, cityscape, and then a couple skies. And I didn't use all of these last time, so I'll probably not use all of them this time. So the landscape is the first one that I need because I want to create that landscape in the background. So I'm going to drop this on the footage, and I have to make sure it's below it, otherwise my image goes away. Okay, so the landscape has to be below the other footage. Now you'll see if I zoom out using the scroll wheel that it is a tad bit too small vertically. Horizontally it's perfect. So I'm going to use this, hold shift, and just scale it out. Okay, and I'm actually going to scale it a bit bigger because I want to pull this down some. Maybe not that much. Maybe like that should be good. Okay, so now I have that in there. Now if we look at this, you'll see that that looks kind of weird, that the lettering is, we're getting closer to the lettering but not getting closer to this stuff back here. So I want to get closer to that as well. So this is in 3D, the background isn't. So I'm going to fake 3D by just zooming in to this. Not as much, but still zooming in. So I'm going to click on the landscape and hit S. Okay, I'm going to rewind my footage. I just drag this blue ticker to the back. I'm going to hit scale here. I'm going to go up until the end. And then I can just click and drag right on the scale just to scale this up some. Okay, so I'm not going crazy, just a little bit. And now if we hit play, we'll see that our background is definitely getting closer, but it's not getting as close as the lettering. Okay, because the lettering is just closer to us. The background is way, way, way far in the back. Okay, so that's just a good way to kind of create that motion of this thing kind of getting closer to it, and that works. Okay. So I'm going to hit S again just to hide the scale. Now what I want to do is blur the background. I also want to take out the sky. So I'm going to take out the sky first, and then I'll blur it. So there's a couple ways we could do this. You could go with the pen tool and try to cut out like each one of these buildings, but that's like a big hassle. Especially for how detailed we're going to see this, we don't need to do that. So I'm going to go under Effect, make sure this layer is clicked, Landscape. Go under Effect, and under Keying, I'm going to go to, let's see, Color Range. We'll try that one. Okay. So what color range allows us to do is pick a color. So I'm just eyedropping the sky. And you'll see how this now turns kind of funky. So what it does is it picks that color, and now that color is transparent. So just so you can see it, if I were to put my lettering behind this, you would actually be able to see my lettering coming between the buildings, which is kind of a neat thing. Put it back to where it was. So I'm going to do that, and then I can use my little eyedropper here and pick some of the areas that didn't get picked. So you see these white areas. If I click on that, it'll add other areas into that mix. Okay, I don't really see anything down here, but I'll pick that too. Okay, now it did destroy some of my buildings. You see up here, it kind of destroyed that and a little bit here. I could try playing with the fuzziness to bring that back, but it's really not that important. We're not going to be that detailed on it, so I'm not even going to be concerned about that. Okay, so you can also play with stuff here and play with that, but for now it's good. So that takes care of some transparency on it so that I could swap in my sky. So I'm going to go to, back to my project, I'm going to go to my skies, and I really liked, I think it was this sky here I really liked. So I'm going to drop this down here, and you'll see the kind of sky that pops onto that background. And if I needed to, I could hit S, and I could scale that up or scale that down or whatever. Okay. Now I could scale the sky, but I don't think it's really necessary because it's so far away. And if you look, our key is not perfect. You can actually see some little artifacts here. And so it actually appears that the sky is moving with it. Okay. So it's not a huge deal if the sky were to move. Now what I want to do is I want to blur the sky and the buildings. So I'm going to click on the landscape. I'm going to go to Effect. I'm going to go to Blur and Sharpen. And I'm just going to do a Gaussian blur. Gaussian blur. Now inside my effects, underneath this color range, I'm done with that, I can just minimize it, I have blurriness. So I just click and drag, and that will blur that background. Okay? And I could go to the sky and do the same thing. Effect, blur, Gaussian blur. And then pull it up a bit. Okay? And if at any point I need to adjust it, I can click back on here and just pull the blurriness down. Okay, so now we have that. So our lettering really stands out with the background looking the way it does. Okay, the background's probably a little bit too bright, so I want to adjust that because it's obviously, like I said, a little bit too bright. So I'm going to do that. Now I could go to each one of these and adjust these separately, but what I can do is go to Layer and add a new adjustment layer. And these work very similar to Photoshop. Okay, so I make a new adjustment layer, and I make sure it's below my render and above my landscape and sky. And anything I do to this adjustment layer will affect the other two. So if I go to Effect, I go to Color Correction, and I go to, I'm going to do a couple things here. One, let's do a tint. Okay, so basically it takes all the blacks, it makes it a black and white image, and it says, what do you want to tint this to? So I'm going to click on the black and say I want to tint the black to, let's say the Macomb blue colors. So the black is going to be like this, and then the white will be a very similar looking blue like that. Like that. Okay, so this gives me that blue coloring, and I could amount to tint it, okay, just so it kind of gets it in the range. If I hit this FX, it'll turn it off, turn it on. So you'll see how it's now tinting it to be that same kind of coloration. It kind of matches this a little bit better. It's still too bright, but it matches the coloration a little bit better. Okay, especially across both pieces. Now that both pieces kind of look like they're part of the same thing. I'm also going to go to color correction, and I'm going to put on a levels or curves. We'll try curves first. And the curves are just like Photoshop curves. I'm going to click and drag down here to darken this. There we go. And then pull that down. So I have a really narrow curve here, just a really big swoosh, just to keep this really dark in the background. There we go. Okay, so again, our point of this is that we wanted the comb to stand out, and it is standing out from the background, which is lovely. All right, so we'll hide the curves, we'll hide the tint. We can always come back and edit those if we need to. This is our adjustment layer for these, so anything that happens below this would have that affected. If I drop this below that, you'll see my comb lettering that happens to it. So I'm just going to pull it up, and there we go. Okay, so now let's get some clouds up in here. So I'm going to click back on my project, and I'm going to find my clouds. There they are. And I'm going to drag this on top of my render layer, okay, just so I can see it clearly. And if I hit S, I can scale it so that it fits a bit better. All right, so now we're going to use this one cloud over and over again just to create a sense of having fog or something in the scene. But with this, I need to cut out the cloud. Now we could try a trick like we did on the landscape, which is to do a key, but the key I don't think would pick up the clouds correctly. Just to test it out, oops, make sure you click on the clouds, and then we'll go to keying, and we'll go to color range. And if I click on the cloud, there we go, you'll see it pick the tops of the clouds, and I can use my plus to grab the areas around it. Oops, hit undo, grab it out here. You'll see that there's too much like blue in the clouds to actually do like a good grab of that. So I'm just going to delete that color range. Just click on it and hit delete. What I'm going to do is something different. I'm going to click the pen tool, and I'm just going to draw a mask. So I'm just clicking and dragging to draw just a very rough mask around these clouds. I'm not getting too precise with it because I'm going to feather it and soften it. And make sure I close it, and there it is. Okay, so now I have, if I click off, I have a very rough, weird looking cloud. So I'm going to click on that and hit F for feather. There's my feather. And I can feather the cloud. So now, if you look at it, it actually looks like an okay cloud. Maybe a little bit more feathering. There we go. Okay, so that feathers that cloud texture, so it's right there. Now it's not going to be this strong, so I'm going to hit T and take the opacity down a touch. Okay, I could also change my mode. So you see on the bottom I have toggle switches and modes. So if you don't see that, you could toggle the switches and modes. We could also do a multiply on this or a screen on this, and that will affect how it's blending with the background. I still think the opacity probably needs to come down a touch more. And if I hit F, my feathering could probably come up a little bit more. Now there's also more options. If I open this mask, okay, I can go to the expansion, maybe expand it out a little bit. I think I'm getting a little bit of a harsh edge on the bottom. Okay, so that should be okay. That should work. I'm going to take the opacity up some. I think I'm getting a little bit too opaque there. All right, so that's good. So now what I want to do is just animate this thing. So I'm going to hit S to scale. And just like we did before, I'm going to click on the start. So I rewind this to the start. I hit the scaler. I go to the end. And I make this bigger. Now because these are closer, I want this to be a bit bigger. Okay, just like it's following it a bit more. Okay, it doesn't follow it perfect, like that's pretty good there. Alright. Now it does look weird how, we'll see it at the end, how this is coming in like that. Like we should have some sort of clouds there, but I really don't want to obscure my lettering. At the end, I'm going to turn the eyeball off. I want it like that. Okay? So what I'm going to do is drop this below the render. And maybe I'll even drop it below my adjustment layer. So now it looks like those clouds are actually part of that scene. Okay. Still think I want to play with those a touch more. Where are my clouds? Right there. There we go. I really cranked up that intensity just so, trying to get rid of that dark spot on the bottom. Okay. I'm going to hit T on this, hold it up some. I'm going to go back to the mask by hitting M, opening that up. Let me take this off a screen. I don't think screen's doing it any favors. Take my expansion down. I'm just trying to find a good balance with these clouds. Pull that feather back down. I think I went too far in the feather. I'm getting some weird stuff happening. Take the mask opacity down. There we go. Okay, the other thing I can do to this too is take my clouds and just do a little blur on them. So a little Gaussian blur, make this maybe like, I don't know, 5. Oops, maybe 10. There we go. So that's looking pretty good. It's looking a lot better. Okay, so now I'm going to take this and duplicate it. So I'm going to duplicate my clouds, and I'm going to hit S to go to my scale, and I'm just going to click the scale off. Okay, so there's no more scale keyframes on here. See, the stopwatch is gone, so there's no more. So I want to scale this up. I'm also going to go to my move tool here and just move it. And I also want to maybe like flip it around. So if I click the unlocker here, I can scale this like that. And this will just give me another level of clouds that can help kind of animate together. So now I'm back at the beginning. I'm going to click the little stopwatch. I'm going to go to the end and click my linker and then scale it up. Okay, so now I have just 2 levels of clouds moving along at the bottom. And it looks like it's mostly like a little fog happening in the bottom. Okay. Now I want to have a cloud covering the Macomb, like it's kind of coming out of a cloud. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to duplicate my clouds. I'm going to hit S. I'm going to turn the scale off. And I'm going to move this one above the other ones. Okay, so you'll see that that one's now there. And I'm going to make this huge. Okay, because I want it to look like we're flying through the cloud. So if I have it big enough, it may look like that. So I'm going to go back to the beginning. I'm going to check out my scale. See how it's scaling like that? How it's scaling from that area? I'm going to move this pivot that's right here. So I'm going to go up here to the pivot tool or hit Y and move this down to like the center. Go back to my move tool. Alright, so now I'm just going to set a key and go to the end and then set another key like that. Okay, so now it looks like we're in a cloudy mess. Okay, so one thing I want to do is I'm going to take the opacity of this down too, because eventually I want this to just to go away. I want it to come up here like this, but maybe around like, I don't know, 1.5 seconds to 2.5 seconds, I want that cloud to just disappear. So I'm going to hit T for opacity, and I'm going to set a opacity key at about 1.5. I'm going to scoot up a little bit, and then set another opacity key at 0. Okay, so now if we watch that again, I hit play. Okay, so that looks okay. I'll probably spread these out a little bit more. There we go. So now it looks like we came through that cloud, more or less. And then we can see our Macomb in the background. Alright, so that's pretty much it. The only thing we want to do is just kind of finish it up. We want to control our viewer's eye, and right now there's too much stuff going on here to kind of focus on that. So I'm going to add a layer new solid right to the very top, and I'm going to color this black. Make sure it's 960 by 540. It's a good time to save. Title sequence, demo, title. Alright, so I'm going to draw a mask on this. I'm going to just go to this tool here where we have an ellipse. And I'm just going to draw an ellipse. So I'm going to click on the center and drag outward. I want it to come from the center, so I hold Control and do something about like that. Okay. Then I want to invert, so I get the other side. And then I want to open my mask up, and I want to feather it. Okay, and then I can play with the expansion again to control where it's at. I can also play with the opacity. And then I'm going to change my mode to multiply. And what this should do is just darken those areas. And it's a subtle effect. But now if we watch this, you can see that our eye gets more drawn to the center of this than it does the outside of it, which is our goal of this whole thing. Okay, and then what I want to do is fade this entire thing on screen. Because right now I don't want to start off like this, I want to start off black, just like the other one did. So if I go to a brand new solid again, make sure it's on the top, I can just hit T for opacity, rewind, and then set an opacity keyframe at 100, go up a little bit, and then set this at 0. So now if we look at this, we're getting that. Maybe a little bit longer. Okay. And if we wanted to, we can go find some cool music and add the music into there. I do think I want to go back to my clouds here that are on top, hit T. I'm just going to stretch these keyframes over a little bit. There we go. Alright, now some other stuff that I could do, just if you're adventurous and want to play a little bit further with this, is I could really enhance this Macomb just so it's a little bit more vibrant in the scene. So under color correction, I can go to levels, and I can play with my levels inside here. I'll punch this up a little bit more, maybe darken my darks and lighten my lights. So you can see how it has a little bit more punch to it. I could also go into, I'm going to duplicate this, and I'm going to go to matte. I'm going to go to simple choker, and I'm going to spread this out. The other way. There it goes. Alright, so you can see a black line happening around this. Okay, so once I get this black line around it, what it's doing is just spreading out where this is at. Alright, so then what I can do is go into here and maybe do like a color correction. I'm going to tint. I'm just going to put my black to white. Okay, so I just get this black and white version like this of my lettering. And then if I take this and use it as a screen, as an ad, as a lighten, I may have to hit T and change my opacity. And then I'll put it like behind it. There we go. So you'll see how we get a little glow on there, and then of course I could go through my blur and do a little Gaussian blur on it and soften that a touch. So my opacity is like 15, so you barely see this happening. But now you can see we have a little glow happening behind our Macomb. And again, it's just another touch of stuff that you could add to it just to kind of pull that a little bit further. And some of these things you're going to do, and you're going to be like, you know what, I really don't care for that. And I think this is one of those effects that, you know, for this, I really don't see it looking very good. Alright, so a little bit, 15% seems like it's okay. I think if I'll blur this maybe a lot more, like 80. And just so you can see what the effect of that is, turn it off, turn it on, you can see how it kind of just pops it out a little bit further from the back. Okay, so once you're done with this, file, save first, and then export, add to render queue. Just wait. Alright, this comes up. We go to lossless. We go to format and change it to QuickTime. If we had audio, we can set some stuff there. We make sure our format options are set to H264, which it is. My quality setting should be up at 100. Hit OK. Hit OK. Go to where it's rendering. And I'm going to go to my desktop here. My D drive here. And inside my movies folder, I'm going to call this Arcona underscore title sequence. Save, and then hit render. And then this rendering is going to go a little bit slower than it did last time, just because we have extra stuff happening. But overall, it's a lot quicker than the Maya render, so you're not very long at all. So then when you turn this in, you're going to turn in your movie file, and you're going to turn in your project folder. So once this is done, I'll show you that process. All right, she's a done. So we'll save, we'll close. We'll speak with a bad accent. All right, so on my D drive, on your P drive, on your external, on your wherever, you will double click and you'll wait. Patience is going to be like the best thing in the world in the future. Right now it doesn't feel like it though. Alright, so I've gone into my D drive. I've gone into my folder 2510 work. I'm going to copy my title sequence. So I just hold Control and drag it to my desktop. That copies it. And we are going to be setting this up to be turned in. So we don't need all this stuff. You'll see that this folder is 65 megabytes. Not a lot to you, but to me it is when I have to copy everyone's stuff. So obviously that's a lot of files I don't need. It's actually 275 megabytes. Still a lot of stuff when you multiply it times 2 classes, times every person turning their stuff in. There we go. So I'm going to go to my title sequence folder now. This is the one on the desktop. I'm going to go and delete the stuff that I don't need. So inside of your images, I don't need all of these rendered files because you have all those rendered files. I don't need them. I should be able to look at the movie and see all the stuff. So I'm going to delete all the rendered files. And this is where a majority of your space is. This is 268, in my case, files. And that's 224 megabytes. So obviously that's a smaller folder. Under the temp, I have all these files here, which are just temporary files. I can delete those. Under your movie, there should be your movie, Sarcona title sequence. I can double click it and preview it. And it should be epically awesome. There it is, gorgeous. All right. Under scenes, you may have more than one scene. So in this case, I have 2 scenes. So I'm going to delete everything but my last scene. Okay, so that should be it. We could actually go through and delete all this other stuff, just in case you had autosaves or anything else. So realistically, the only things I need should be... Oops, I deleted the movies folder. We need that. I don't need images, don't need render data, don't need scripts, don't need sound. Okay, so this is the only thing that I need. The movies, because your movie's in it. The scenes, because your last scene is in it. The source images, because this is where all your source images are that you would have used inside your project. And then your After Effects project, and then leave this workspace.mel in there. Okay, and then of course make sure that your name is on this so I know whose it is. Sarcona underscore title sequence. And you'll take this and you'll drop this folder onto the server to submit it. And if I go to my properties for this, you'll see that this is only 47 megabytes, definitely much smaller than the previous one of 275. Okay, so that's what you're going to turn in, is that folder with all your stuff nicely organized. And that way I can open up your file and make sure that you've done everything that I've asked for, and make sure your movie looks good and all that other jazz. All right, so that's how you put it together after we get it out of Maya.